Welcome back to another edition of Models for Mental Health with the International Indigenous Fashion Week. And I'm super excited because I'm so honored to be talking to our guest today. She is absolutely a change maker in the Canadian fashion industry. I am so excited to introduce Kim Coltman. Hi, Kim.
Sensei, I'm speaking with you today from the ancestral and unceded territories of the Secwepemc people. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you as well, Kim. In my previous chats with you, you absolutely have a beautiful story to share with us. So let's get started. When we talk about mental health, I know that mental health means different for different people. So, what does it mean to you, and what is your story?
Mental health has always been a challenge. It's something that I think the majority of people actually deal with. We all go through ups and downs. We're all on this roller coaster called life.
Yes.
So, and I think that the way that we choose to deal with the traumas and the upsets and the disappointments of life really speaks volumes. And I think that for a lot of people, particularly people who are in the arts field, that is our way of dealing with the traumas of life. Having been raised by a mom who was in residential school, I am definitely a person who has suffered generational trauma through the residential school system. Depression was something that I always fought. It was, there was a time in my life where suicide was the most prominent thought in my head, and it wasn't going away. There was no way to make that stop. I never felt like I was worthy. I felt like everybody would be better off without me. I felt like I was a drain on people. And I think that I felt that way because I didn't find the balance that I needed within my environment. And I think that that's something that's truly important to mental health, is making sure that your environment is supportive of your mental health well-being, of your well-being in everything, whether it be spiritual, physical, emotional, or mental. Those things need to balance. And the trick is to find the balance. And
Yes.
never fool yourself to believe that just because you found the balance, it's going to remain there. Things are going to continue to happen in your life. So it's again about being able to find a way to deal with your hurt, your pain, your confusion,
Yes.
because those things are all contributing factors.
100%, 100%. So now let's talk about your own personal journey with mental health. When did it start?
I think the first time I ever went out into the middle of a field or a yard and started screaming, I want to go home up at the sky,
Mhm.
I was about 7 years old.
Wow.
And at that point in time, I wanted to die. That was, I think, there were so many things within my childhood that brought me to that place. My earliest memory of being raped was when I was 4. So that there was always that stuff, that hurt, that confusion, that pain in the background. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it. I was too young to understand it.
Yeah.
And I didn't start to comprehend any of that until I was 27. So from 7 to 27, 20 years, I
Yes.
struggled with my mental health and with depression. It, I couldn't find a balance. I didn't know where the balance was because I didn't understand what happened. I didn't understand that those things were violent acts against me as a child. And I always blamed myself. I thought there was something wrong with me.
Mhm.
So then when I was abducted, when it was a week before my 16th birthday, and I was abducted, and to this day, I don't know how long he held me for. But I'm one of the lucky ones. I escaped. I'm alive. I can talk about it. So that is a victory in and of itself. And sometimes we need to take those little victories, even though they may not seem like they're victories, they are. I got through it. I lived. That is a victory. And I have to constantly remind myself of that, because if I don't, then I'll sink back into the depression. So it's the little tiny victories that get us through the day.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like, we are very, very happy to have you. You're alive
Thank you.
and you have done so
I know.
much for our community. Let's talk about um, how you started your work in the fashion industry.
I actually started working in the fashion industry because I had an aunt that was a model. And she was my favorite auntie. I loved her to pieces. I would follow her everywhere she would go, and I would mimic the way she walked. I would mimic the way she sat. She was the most elegant person I'd ever seen in my life. She was also one of the very first Indigenous fashion models in Canada.
Awesome.
So when she died, I was 12, and I thought, okay, I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to move forward with this for my auntie. This was for my auntie. So I had a social worker that I went to. I was in care, in and out of care most of my life. My mom was an addict, and was in and out of jail. So we were in and out of care.
Mhm.
But this social worker asked me what I wanted to do. So I told her I wanted to be a model. So she phoned all of the different modeling agencies in Vancouver. She found one that was willing to meet with me, and she took me there. So as I walked into Patricia Stevens in Vancouver on Granville Street in 1972,
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to meet a woman and to have a social worker who was supporting me. I hadn't had that before. I hadn't had that kind of support.
Mhm.
So the agent at Patricia Stevens, and I truly wish I could remember her name, but I can't.
Mhm.
Um, she agreed to sponsor me as long as I worked for Patricia Stevens for 2 years.
Yeah.
So they did my training,
Mhm.
and they were surprised by how little training I needed. But again, I had been mimicking my aunt my whole life. So it was, that was where I started. And then I modeled mostly in Vancouver.
Mhm.
And then I got a break, and there was a photographer in Vancouver from Japan, and he was doing a series,
Mhm.
a worldwide series, a world collection, let's say, of photos. And so I was one of the models that they sent. He wanted an Indigenous model, so I was sent. And he hung me upside down from a ceiling by my ankles.
Wow.
and, and he had all of these quite big, huge gold colored balloons filled with helium. So what he did was he swung me across the room by my ankles and released all the gold helium filled balloons. And I had a bottle of champagne and a champagne glass in my hand. And I had to arch up and show the label on the champagne bottle.
Yes.
And then all the bubbles were underneath me in the air. And the shots were amazing, but I was terrified.
That sounds interesting on how he was able to pull that off.
It was amazing.
Painful?
I'd never seen. What's that?
Was it painful being hung upside down?
No, it was a riot. I had so much fun. So, but I have to admit, I was terrified in the beginning. I thought, okay, here I am. I'm alone in the studio with this man that I don't know, and he's tying up my ankles, right?
Yeah.
This was before I'd been abducted, so that wasn't the reason I was scared. I was scared that I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yes.
But later, I don't think I would have been able to do that shoot. In any case, he took his photo works and he toured around the globe with his photo works, and then he landed in Paris.
Mhm.
And he asked that I be sent to Paris because he wanted to work with me again. My hair was down to my ankles at the time,
Mhm.
So what he had envisioned was turning my hair into the Eiffel Tower, which he did.
Wow.
So we shot in front of the Eiffel Tower, and I don't have any of the images anymore, and I don't remember the name of the photographer. So that's upsetting, but it's also a thrill to have even been able to experience it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so now that you have your own personal experience of being a fashion model, so how are you able to take that into your work now within the community, developing fashion for other people?
I think that it's important that we pass on our knowledge and our skills, whether it be coming from the elders and the storytellers of our community, or just from people who have lived experiences that can help to move us forward. We are in a time of growth right now,
Mhm.
and I'm very, very thrilled to be a part of it. So, as long as we keep watering our gardens with our knowledge and our skills, then we're going to thrive and we're going to grow and we're going to be seeing some exponential success in our communities.
That's true. That's true. So now I'm trying to piece everything together from, being raped at 4 to modeling and then being abducted again. Sorry, being abducted and then doing all this great community work that you do in the fashion industry. How are you able to cope when you are, feeling depressed, feeling down, feeling anxious?
I still go through those. Absolutely. That's why I said at the beginning of this is a roller coaster. And it's not one you can get off of unless you die. And I have children now and I have grandchildren now, and I just don't want to die. I want to be around for when my granddaughters graduate high school, when they get married, when they have children of their own. I want to be around.
Mhm.
And so I'm able to focus more on what I have than what I don't have. I'm able to focus more on what I'm doing than what has been done to me. And those are the ways that I cope with it. When I say it like that, it sounds like it's easy. It's not.
Mhm.
Nothing that's worth having is ever easy. And for me, being able to go out into the community and create beautiful works of art, to create self-awareness and self-esteem in our young people, to be able to lift up those in our community who are working so diligently to show their beautiful work. And it is art, it is wearable art, all of it, and it tells a story. So being able to help them express their own stories really gets me through a lot of this. It's the old heal thyself by helping others,
Yeah.
and I think that there are a lot of us that do that. I think that there are a lot of truly compassionate people out there who really want to be able to lift others up and to make sure that they're okay once they get there, because that too is a balance. When you're only used to being able to go so far, self-sabotage is truly a tripping hazard, because we all do it. Am I worthy? Am I a pretender? Am I? And we all question ourselves that way, even though we know that we're not. I mean, I'll have been in this industry this coming June. I'll have been in this industry for 50 years. If I don't
Wow.
know something by now, I don't know anything at all. So, and I mean, the industry has changed. It has grown. It has become more accepting. It has become more inclusive, I think is the word that I'm looking for. And that is phenomenal. That is excellent news for all of us, because when I first started, if you were not 5'8" and over and you weren't a size 2 or a size 4, you were not a model.
Yes.
That has changed. That actually originally changed in 1987. I was in New York for the World Modeling Association convention, and it was a competition. And there were 380 female models there, 260 male models from all over the world.
Wow.
and we were all competing against each other.
Yes.
I got third, which was actually good considering that I was only 5'8" and most of the models I was competing against were 6-footers. So I did actually pretty well. So I can't be mad about that. And again, 380 female models that I'm competing against,
Yes.
and they were stunning. These women, I'd never been surrounded by so much beauty in my life. And it was amazing to be there. But at that convention, they announced that they were starting 2 new categories for models.
Yes.
The first was BBW, so big, beautiful women. Now they're just called plus size, which annoys me. That doesn't describe who they are. They're not just a size. They are big, beautiful women. So I would prefer to go back to calling them BBWs. And they also introduced a category of models who were 5'4" and under.
The petite.
But what that effectively did was it excluded anybody who was 5'5", 5'6", 5'7".
Yes. Now where do they belong?
Precisely. So now that has slid a lot. Now there's no actual height requirements for most North American shows, but your European shows still have height requirements. So North America, in my opinion, is way ahead of the Europeans at this point in time in the fashion industry. And people will say that's backwards, but I don't think so. Only because of the inclusivity that we have here.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter your age anymore. It used to be you had to be between the ages of 16 and 24, or forget it. At 25, you were deemed a classic model. Are you kidding me? Right?
I am super classic now too at my age.
So, I mean, now I wouldn't mind them calling me a classic model. I'm 61. But when I was 25 and they started calling me a classic model, I thought, hey, that's rude.
That's true. And you know what I really like when you touched on being inclusive, because right now we're seeing, well, I don't really want to call it a disability, but their uniqueness, right? People with vitiligo or eczema or Down syndrome as well. A lot of
Yes.
them are coming into mainstream, and I really love the work that you did as well. Let's talk about that.
At that point in time, I was working in a group home for, they called it apartment management training skills. And they had just shut down all of the institutions in Canada, and there were all of these displaced people. So that was, I think, probably 1984, 1985, somewhere in there. And there was no place for them to go. Many of these people, for example, one of my clients, he had been surrendered at birth and put in an institution. And he was 65 years old when they shut down the institution. So he had only ever known an institution. He didn't know how to dress himself. He didn't know how to do laundry. He didn't know how to shop. He had no idea how to handle money. And that was my job, was to teach them those skills.
Mhm.
But what ended up happening was that the people in the community didn't know how to respond to these individuals either. They were terrified of them. They hadn't been around them. They were all in institutions. So nobody had ever seen disabled people before, like in the way developmentally delayed adults is what the term was back then. So they had just the fear, I think, is what drove them. But they would beat up my clients. They would make fun of them. They would call them names. They would throw things at them. They would humiliate them in any way that they could. They would go to the store with $5. They'd get one chocolate bar, which was like 50 cents back then. And they'd come home with no change, because the people in the stores would rip them off, understanding that they had no clue about money. They had no idea what the value was. Yeah. So my job was to teach them that, but it ended up evolving into me developing a modeling program specifically tailored to their needs. Many of them at that time also walked with their hands above their heads. We called it an institutional shuffle, because that was how they kept their balance. So they walked very much like orangutans. And so I needed to find a way to compensate for that, to find a way to teach them to walk more like everybody else so that they were less likely to be targeted.
Yeah.
And so we did. And every time I do classes, any kind of training, I always set up a fashion show at the end of it. So I allowed my clients to choose which nonprofit organizations we wanted to support. Sometimes we were supporting the Special Olympics. Sometimes we were supporting cancer. Sometimes we were supporting Down syndrome or Turner syndrome or whatever it was that the clients wanted to support at that point in time. That was never my decision. So later, in 2015, when this whole issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls was catapulted into the mainstream media, I started doing training courses for Indigenous peoples, whether they be male, female, or two-spirit, does not matter. What matters is that at this point in time, they are targets. Within the residential school, our elders were taught to look at their feet, and they were to be seen and not heard, and those things were carried forward into the children. So most Indigenous people now, when they walk, they look at their feet, in my experience. So that was something that I needed to go in and correct with modeling. So I started teaching modeling. And now we've taken models to Paris with us. We're about to take models to Australia with us. These are Canadian Indigenous fashion models, and I am so proud to know them. Actually, I shouldn't say that, because we do have a couple of models who are participating in the competition from the US as well. So I should say that they're all from Turtle Island, and that just makes me super proud.
Yes, well, that's amazing. And you know what? We cannot wait to see photos of this project that you have. I'm pretty sure we have a lot of people wondering, oh, where can I find Kim Coltman? So for people wondering, how can we find you on social media?
My Facebook page is Fashion Speaks International. Same with my Instagram. It's at Fashion Speaks International. I'm on Twitter at Fashion Speaks International. Yeah, and my website at the moment is down. I'm completely revamping it. It was getting too confusing. I was adding too much stuff. So it's down, and I'm starting it over. And when I get it back up and running, it'll be fashionspeaksinternational.com.
Awesome. And again, all of that social media links will be right here on your screen. There you go. There. So Kim, I am so happy to be spending this time chatting with you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time today. I'm pretty sure we'll be reaching out to so many people. A lot of people will be able to hear your story. If there is one advice that we can share to girls who, have gone through the same thing as you, what can you tell them?
Don't let them win. As long as you stay in the trauma, they win. So release it. It's not yours. The trauma happened to you, but the shame and the guilt don't lie with you. It lies with the abuser. Give it back. It's not yours.
That's beautiful. Once again, Kim, thank you very much. And thank you for all the great work that you have done to our community.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Bye.
Bye.